Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city. Or should I say, our city. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. It might seem odd to you, but it makes perfect sense for us in this city.
The new design of regional plans is to redesign all cities to transit-oriented development, high-density development in the center of cities where you have no private space.
In our city, we don't pay any rent because someone else is using our free space whenever we do not need it. My living room is used for business meetings when I am not there.
And that goes right back to the 2030 agenda, the Great Reset agenda, where you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. Well, if I own nothing, who owns everything? Wealth is not a currency unit. Wealth is not gold. Wealth is not Bitcoin. Wealth is goods and services.
Shopping? I can't really remember what that is. For most of us, it has been turned into choosing things to use. Sometimes I find this fun, and sometimes I just want the algorithm to do it for me.
They're heading towards, and they openly state it, they're heading towards the extinction of the human race and changing it into something else, into something which is more of a computer.
My biggest concern is all the people who do not live in our city. Those we lost on the way. Those who decided that it became too much, all this technology. Those who felt obsolete and useless when robots and AI took over big parts of our jobs. Those who got upset with the political system and turned against it. They live different kinds of lives outside of the city. Some have formed little self-supplying communities. Others just stayed in the empty and abandoned houses in small 19th century villages.
Their future is one where the sky's dark, the seas are brown, and you're arrested for things you haven't even done yet.
Even in the World Economic Forum's own articles, they talk about by that year, they hope to be able to surveil people's thoughts and even their dreams.
Once in a while, I get annoyed about the fact that I have no real privacy. Nowhere I can go and not be registered. I know that somewhere, everything I do, think, and dream of is recorded. I just hope that nobody will use it against me. All in all, it is a good life. Much better than the path we were on.
What I see is the gradual outsourcing of human reproduction to technology. What does that mean, the full outsourcing of human reproduction in all its stages to technology? Well, it means that you have full control of the numbers and full control over the type of human being that is going to come out. If you want to see the kind of world we're moving forward, it's this world. And to just give a glimpse of it, it's a world which is fully automatized, where everything is measured, where emotions are replaced by numbers, rankings, indicators, where we live as units.
This equation has four factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people, That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
Bill Gates is on the spectrum of autistic. Would you agree?
He can't be autistic in the genuine sense. He's more of a psychopath. If you have to make a diagnosis, because autism impairs you to the degree that you can't anticipate the responses of other people. These people are operating on a much higher level. It's much nearer to what would be psychopathy. Now, whether they get some weird traits that look like autism, I don't know. But autistic people are victims. They're not going to be taking over the world. They're sociopaths.
Bill Gates is on the spectrum of autistic. Would you agree?
He can't be autistic in the genuine sense. He's more of a psychopath. If you have to make a diagnosis, because autism impairs you to the degree that you can't anticipate the responses of other people. These people are operating on a much higher level. It's much nearer to what would be psychopathy. Now, whether they get some weird traits that look like autism, I don't know. But autistic people are victims. They're not going to be taking over the world. They're sociopaths.
I'm entering into the second part of my research about the World Economic Forum. At the beginning, the formation, you had people like Aurelio Peccei who came and spoke about the limits of growth and did a Malthusian speech in, I think it was 1973 World Economic Forum, which was seen as a centerpiece. And really they were talking about humans being the enemy. Humans being the enemy. The enemy of humans is humans. The people in the World Economic Forum, they flock to that idea. They flock, and they only bring in people who have that same ideology. And they only bring in people who have that same ideology. And they only bring in people who have that same ideology.
Now, 11 billion people, still a lot, but the good news is that the faster we improve health, the faster family size goes down.
And then you see it being deployed.
I would argue that WEF is a front organization, just like Epstein was a front man. They're the front people for the same ideology and the same entity, if you will, whatever that entity is.
Erodes human rights and leads to a structure where the superhuman feels that he has the right to decide who lives and dies, because they don't believe in the sanctity of life. They believe in survival of the fittest.
And then the final solution, which is a year to 2 years off, is the vaccine. So we've got to go full speed ahead on all three fronts.
Just to head off the conspiracy theorists, maybe we shouldn't call the vaccine the final solution. Maybe just the best solution.
Greece is doing an amazing job in containing this epidemic. If I had to choose, say, between Greece and the United States, who should be leading the world now, giving us a plan of action, I would definitely choose Greece. Greece is doing an amazing job in containing this epidemic. If I had to choose, say, between Greece and the United States, who should be leading the world now, giving us a plan of action, I would definitely choose Greece.
What do we need humans for? Or at least, what do we need so many humans for?
Do you have an answer in the book?
At present, the best guess we have is keep them happy with drugs and computer games.
And we call this the metaverse.
Listen for yourself to the architect, Yuval Noah Harari. He is the designer behind what Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum is doing.
So this is the crucial revolution, and COVID is critical because this is what convinces people to accept, to legitimize total biometric surveillance, total biometric surveillance, total biometric surveillance, total biometric surveillance. We want to stop this epidemic. We need not just to monitor people, we need to monitor what's happening under their skin.
What we have seen so far, it's corporations and governments collecting data about where we go, who we meet, what movies we watch. The next phase is the surveillance going under our skin. We now see mass surveillance systems established even in democratic countries, which previously rejected them. And we also see a change in the nature of surveillance. Previously, surveillance was mainly above the skin. Now it's going under 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 the skin. Governments want to know not just where we go or who we meet. Above all, they want to know what is happening under our skin. What's our body temperature? What's our blood pressure? What is our medical condition? Now humans are developing even bigger powers than ever before. We are really acquiring divine powers of creation and destruction. We are really upgrading humans into gods. We are acquiring, for instance, the power to re-engineer life. Humans are now hackable animals. You know, the whole idea that humans have, you know, they have this soul or spirit and they have free will and nobody knows what's happening inside me. So whatever I choose, whether in the election or whether in the supermarket, this is my free will. That's over. That's over. That's over. That's over. I know that in recent years, we saw populist politicians undermining deliberately the trust that people have in important institutions like universities, like respectable media outlets.
All right. We're going to come back and talk about that.
I've worked on climate change for 25 years.
I worked on climate change since '73.
So you
just to tell you, because I was the person who gave the Club of Rome the first big platform. I share with you the concern, and I think we can solve those issues only if we repair our global architecture and our global system.
In 1968, Aurelio Pache, David Rockefeller, and Alexander King founded an organization they called the Club of Rome.
Founded by members of the great and the good, members of the, to use the conspiratorial terms, the globalist elite, who produce fatuous documents from time to time, echoing the various mantras and nostrums of socialism or communism at a particular moment.
The club floundered around for a few years trying to solve the problems of mankind. But then, in 1972, it revised an idea spawned by Thomas Malthus in 1798. Malthus was an English scholar who wrote a book entitled An Essay on the Principle of Population. Basically, the principle was this. Every time the human race invented a way to produce more food, it used the abundance to increase its population rather than improve its living standard. Thus, humanity never advanced like it could if a small elite were ruling a modestly populated world.
Malthusianism was, in a sense, a theory or a counsel of despair, that as people gained technological knowledge to produce more food, that would make them to a certain extent more healthy, and they could reproduce at a faster rate as opposed to dying off quickly. And the population would then expand, potentially geometrically, and this would outrun food production, and so you had this vicious circle which could never be corrected.
The club, using computers of the day to extrapolate not only population growth but resource depletion, came up with a twist on Malthus and published it in a book entitled The Limits to Growth. Like Report from Iron Mountain, Limits to Growth was also a bestseller. The twist was this. Human populations grew exponentially while food populations only grew linearly.
And the Malthusian population model, which is a simple equation, simply says that if there's enough resources, the population will go on doubling until there isn't enough resources.
In other words, the human race was going to run out of food and deplete its resources. This, the club warned, would lead to a sudden and uncontrollable decline in both population and industrial capacity by the year 2072. Very plausible, many thought. After all, when Malthus wrote Essay on the Principle of Population, the world population was only 800 million. Now, when the Club of Rome published Limits to Growth, the world population was 3.8 billion and still growing exponentially. Given that war could no longer be used as a unifying principle, perhaps the threats posed by overpopulation would fit the bill. This idea excited the power elite and initiated a UN conference in 1976 in Vancouver, Canada, known as Habitat 1.
This was the beginning of a series of meetings that they had at the UN starting clear back in the 1970s.
And this is where sustainable development was defined as human beings must not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their needs.
It was kind of an intellectual way of explaining why the world needed world government, because without world government, individual governments couldn't handle all of these really big problems that now needed to be solved on a global scale.
The green recovery represents an unprecedented opportunity to rethink and reset the ways in which we live and do business.
We need a great reset.
World's transition to net zero at the heart of how we operate. I'm afraid we are literally at the last hour, and there is real urgency for action. We know now what we have to do to rescue the situation, rather than going on talking about it.
Σάλο έχει προκαλέσει η νέα προφητεία από τον πανίσχυρο Bill Gates, ο οποίος προβλέπει πως ο πλανήτης απειλείται από δύο καταστροφές στο άμεσο μέλλον. Συνδεόμαστε με τον ανταποκριτή του Αντένα στις Ηνωμένες Πολιτείες, το Θανάση Τσίτσα, για να μας δώσει το ρεπορτάζ. Θανάση, σε ακούμε.
Ο ιδρυτής της Microsoft, ο Bill Gates, ο οποίος, Νίκο, είχε προβλέψει το 2015 το ξέσπασμα της σημερινής πανδημίας, δήλωσε ότι η κλιματική αλλαγή και η βιοτρομοκρατία είναι δύο καταστροφές για τις οποίες η ανθρωπότητα δεν είναι ακόμα κατάλληλα προετοιμασμένη. Η επόμενη πανδημία, όπως είπε, έχει μια καλή πιθανότητα να προέλθει από μια οθόνη υπολογιστή και θα είναι είτε έργο της φύσης είτε από τα χέρια ενός τρομοκράτη. Ο Gates ανέφερε ότι ένα άτομο μπορεί πλέον εύκολα να δημιουργήσει ένα θανατηφόρο ιό και οι πιθανότητες να χρειαστεί να αντιμετωπίσουμε τέτοιου είδους ιούς είναι περισσότερες από εκείνες που αντιμετωπίσαμε πανδημίες που προκαλούνται φυσικά, όπως ο κορονοϊός. Αν προκύψει μια καταστροφή από βιοτρομοκρατία, το ανθρώπινο είδος πιθανότατα θα μετρήσει ένα αριθμό θανάτων μεγαλύτερο της πανδημίας που βιώνουμε σήμερα και να προκαλέσει απώλειες περισσότερες και από εκείνες ενός πυρηνικού πολέμου. Σε κάθε περίπτωση, όπως τόνισε ο Bill Gates, πρέπει οι κυβερνήσεις να προετοιμάζονται σαν να πρόκειται να αντιμετωπίσουν ένα πόλεμο και να βελτιώσουν την ετοιμότητά τους.
Μα της κακών γίνεται για άλλη μια φορά ο Bill Gates. Ας ελπίσουμε να λάβουν σοβαρά υπόψη τους τις προφητείες του εντός εισαγωγικών οι κυβερνήσεις και να προετοιμαστούν κατάλληλα. Να ευχαριστήσουμε τον Θανάση Τσίτσα.
Πόσο ισχυρό βιολογικό όπλο είναι ο ιός, βλέπετε πόσο ισχυρό βιολογικό όπλο είναι ο ιός, βλέπετε πόσο ισχυρό βιολογικό όπλο είναι ο ιός και δυστυχώς δεν έχουμε τελειώσει ακόμα ενώ φτάνουμε ως δρόμο και πρέπει να το γνωρίζουμε. Δυστυχώς δεν έχουμε τελειώσει ακόμα ενώ φτάνουμε ως δρόμο και πρέπει να το γνωρίζουμε.
Όπως τόνισε ο Bill Gates, πρέπει οι κυβερνήσεις να προετοιμάζονται σαν να πρόκειται να αντιμετωπίσουν ένα πόλεμο και να βελτιώσουν την ετοιμότητά τους. Η πανδημία, όπως είπε, έχει μια καλή πιθανότητα να προέλθει από μια οθόνη υπολογιστή και θα είναι άτομο. Μπορεί πλέον εύκολα να δημιουργήσει ένα θανατηφόρο ιό και οι πιθανότητες να χρειαστεί να αντιμετωπίσουμε τέτοιου είδους ιούς είναι περισσότερες από αυτές που...
Κάποιος κάνει το Θεό με ένα λάπτοπ και θα του κόψω τα χέρια. Τέλος.
When you're ready to rise up, you'll rise up. All the power you need is in your hands. Now look around you. Our financial systems have been hijacked by a generation of thieves. While you're working harder and harder for less and less, the game is being rigged against you. They're turning all of us into virtual slaves. Looters, at the heart of our financial system, are price-fixing our most precious resources. Food, water, energy, gold. Even the value of money itself is being siphoned away by high-level crooks in a giant mushrooming conspiracy of unstoppable corruption. They're robbing billions of people of trillions of dollars a year, folks. There is no need for austerity measures. There is no need for financial suffering. No need for poverty. There is no scarcity. We are simply the victims of a robbery of unimaginable proportions. We have been fed a lie so vast it oppresses all of humanity. The truth is, there is more than enough to go around. 60 years ago, productivity was increasing so fast, they predicted by today, entire families could live comfortably on the income of just one provider, working only 10 hours a week. They wondered what we'd do with all of our spare time. What happened to that dream? Turns out they were right. What took a full work week back then can be done in just 10 hours today. We have technologies that multiply our efforts 1,000-fold and connect us in ways they never imagined. We are now 100 times richer than in that great heyday of the 50s. We are heirs to a great bounty of prosperity, $70 trillion in the U.S. alone, over $200,000 for every man, woman, and child. The only reason we don't experience this wealth is because it's being siphoned away by a corrupt criminal class. They loot through giant corporations, raising prices, lowering wages, stealing the fruits of our productivity. Where once whole families prospered with just one provider, now both parents work, delivering 8 times the productivity but struggling to make ends meet. They control the media using hot-button social issues to divide us, brother against brother, so we fight each other while they loot our sacred institutions. They make us fear too big to fail banks collapsing, but if they did, we'd suddenly recover the 8 times our income that's being siphoned away every single day. Don't give yourselves to these crooks who abuse you and enslave you, who steal your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel. Let us burn these leeches off our backs. Let us replace the corrupt systems with better systems that benefit everyone. Let us reclaim the fruits of our productivity. Let us share our prosperity. We can do this now. We are the creators, and when we come together, we have the power to create whatever future we